Okay, my friends, this is going to get extremely serious today because there is some serious things that need to be seen and spoken about. Now, I have a friend that has written pretty much a library about my work, and these are just the Mudfossils and Velikowski, because he plays heavily into this, and Introduction to Mudfossils and Geology and Titans of Our World and Atlantis and the Draining of the Sahara. And these are all from papers I did. This one goes back to 2015 about the draining of the Sahara and the eye of the Sahara being Atlantis. And all my mud fossil work goes way back then too. And today I am going to go into something that I've been meaning to do, but it's so spectacular and so abrasive to some people that I sort of hesitated to do a deep discussion about this dragon that's in the desert in Morocco. Now, I've done it a number of times, and I've done it, I thought, pretty deeply, but this time I have another new take on it. And it's going to really offend a lot of people. But I go for truth, and then we discuss what the ancient text said about these creatures that I have determined existed. And there's no question they're here. Absolutely none. How do you deal with that? Or how do you interpret that? Or how do you resolve what you believe? Because this is going to, I don't care who you are, this is going to absolutely change what you believe, or at least it's going to put a dent in what you believe, and then you go from there. If it's something you don't believe it, that's fine. But I'm going to show something that I think is worthy of examination. And in their ancient text, it said, you're going to be disturbed. You're going to be disturbed. I can guarantee you that. All right, this is a mind blower. I wrote a paper on the Atlantis being the eye of the Sahara and how it drained the ocean of the Sahara Ocean, basically, right out through here. You see all this runoff? It's just pretty obvious it's running off. And it actually, I believe, created the Cape Verde Islands out here. You see all this runoff coming off here? And it just piled up here and skirted around, and that's where it piled up. And this is an alluvial plain, they call it. It's just a flat runoff because it's just everything ran out of here. And Plato said when Atlantis collapsed and the deluge across Atlantis happened, they will never speak of mud again. There was so much mud. Now, don't forget. Here's the thing to take away from this. This is very. I thought it was just amazing. I'm looking at this thing for years. I'm looking at the eye of the Sahara, trying to see if it makes sense, if it was Atlantis. And yes, absolutely it did. And finally I said, I'll just write a paper about it and I'll move on. So I wrote the paper in 2015. Now, shortly thereafter, I came to a revelation, and I'll tell you about it in a minute, but I just want to show you, this is Atlantis, and this is all the stuff that ran out when the straits collapsed. And they said it was right outside the straits. Well, what straits? I don't see any straits, do you? Well, wait a minute, I do. I actually do. Look at that. That looks pretty straight to me. That looks like somebody engineered a straits so that they could only get through this one place, and they probably had it garrisoned so that they could only let who they wanted in and out of that particular ocean. That's why they were so filthy stinking rich. All right, here's Atlantis. And it is, I'm telling you, when I started looking into this, I really got into this, and I think I can even see where the boat docks were. And I think I can even see some possible buildings that are left. Now, this is exactly what Plato said. And he said they mined everything from underneath this structure of precious metals and so forth, and finally the thing collapsed. Now, if you look around here at the edges, you see these here? You see all those things coming in? They look like channels. Now, I do notice some other reasons for this, but I don't see why they couldn't use these for boat channels to come in right up to the edge of the ring, which is right here. You got to give it a second to settle in. And you can see where they came in with like a major channel or canal or whatever you want to call it. And then they came right up here to these little spots right here, which are literally, I think they could have been boat docks. All the way along here. Some places it's just very, very easy to see them. Let me see if I can get a good spot. Hold on, let me look. All right, here's one of those rings. These look like they could have been channels coming in, and then these little things came up to the edge of the ring, and these could have even been where there was buildings or something here. You see these little, what's all that doing there? And why is these just coming in all like this? All right, and that's a ring. That's one of the rings. And then on the other side, it's got the same thing coming out again. You see it? So they'd be coming off of this side now, over to here, going back and forth. Looks like to me that's a possibility. I'm just making a possibility. I do know there's something else going on here too that I'm not going to talk about at the minute. But you see how they all have these same structures going back and forth between the rings. You see them here, down here? So they could be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But they had to have little channels or whatever. And all of these places, these little white dots, I don't know what they are. They could be buildings for all I know. But I was looking at this very, very closely for, it had to be a couple of years. And then all of a sudden I realized there was something else going on here. And the only reason I realized it because I literally got a message. I got a message because nobody would listen to my story about the giants and about everything on the earth that supported the ancient texts. And I was I'm going to just be honest with you, I was in terrible despair, thinking I'm never going to be able to get this message out, because I did get another message, and the message said these things are for you to see and for others as a test. I woke up one morning, I said to my wife, there's something going on. I got a feeling that I have to go in the woods and look for something. And I did, and I found the giants. And when I started looking up the giants, and because I was freaking out, because they were, there's no question whatsoever, they were body parts of giants. I found them all over my property. And after having that message, and then I go, and all of a sudden it came up, these things are for you to see and for others as a test. And I freaked out. And that was like, I don't know, 2010, somewhere around there. And so I started looking. Everything I looked at, I couldn't not see things. I could see everything. I could see feet. I could see gooses. I could see dragons. And I'm going to show you right now, gigantic fish, everything. But up until this point, I'm in total despair because nobody will listen to me. I'm being treated like an idiot. I thought I was going to lose my wife because she was so upset about me getting into this. Nobody would talk to me anymore. I lost basically all my friends. And my family thought I was totally insane. So I'm sitting here almost in tears. And I'm saying, I can't do this, God. If you put me in charge of this, you made a big mistake. And I can't do it. And all of a sudden, I swear this is the honest truth. Everything I'm saying now is the truth. I'm not lying one tiny bit. I'm sitting here, and I can't remember whether I was watching this at that particular time or not, looking into this, but I'm in despair. And I hear from behind me a voice saying, "Look in Morocco." And I said, "Look in Morocco? What the hell?" And I turned around, there was nothing there other than the TV was on, but it was a car commercial. They did a car commercial. They was talking nothing about Morocco. So I said, well, I heard it. I'm going to look. And guess what happened? I looked and I found a dragon. I found the dragon right here. There's the dragon in Morocco. When I saw that, within a minute or two, I freaked out. And then I realized the gigantic fish here. he was attacking this gigantic fish. All right, we're going to look into this because people, their eyes can't see what's in front of them because it's just too big to see. It's too much to take in. But this dragon runs all the way from here, all the way back to here. That's 1,100 miles long. And he is written about, this exact dragon is written about in the ancient texts. He's called Typhon. And his head often brushed the stars. Now, I have all kinds of people telling me, how could this thing possibly live on the face of the earth? This is impossible. The earth must be much bigger than they're telling us. No, the earth, we can see the earth. Their space station is there. At one time, I can't discount the fact that the earth could have been a gigantic, big, flat plate. I can't say it's not. Because everything spins like this, and then eventually it congeals and turns into a ball. So I can't see that's impossible. That the Earth was flat at one time and very, very spread out, and who knows? But I know they're here. They're absolutely 100% here. I also know that the ancient texts said that these things could live in space, and they had battles in space. They were fighting in space. Jupiter itself, the planet Jupiter, is Zeus. Zeus was the god of this realm, and he's talked about in the same breath as Typhon. Now, I've shown this. Well, hold on one second. All right, I just took a picture of this and highlighted it. There's his red flared eye, which is right there. This little flashy stuff is the same thing you see on the parades, on the dragons in China and so forth. These are his scales. Way up here is his scales. All right. Down here is all the runoff, the body fluids that run out of a dead, decaying body. This is where he spit at the fish to try to kill the fish. I'm going to explain this in extreme detail in a minute. And here's his throat. Runs all the way down, all the way down. He was cut and his throat was gashed down here. And that was also written about in the ancient text. Now, I'm going to show you his armor-plated scales, his throat. This yellow stuff right here is where he issued out all of this nasty stuff. It came from here and something coming out of his nose together. When they come together, and there's stories about the great giant shaking the entire earth and smoke and flame coming out of his mouth and nose. And guess who that happened to be? God. I know this is shocking as hell. This is 2 Samuel 22. And here's what it says about this guy he was in terrible distress, and he says, "In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried to my God, and he did hear my voice out of his temple, and my cry did enter into his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of heaven moved and shook, because he was wroth." He was pissed. "Then went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it." Remember, kindled. And his nostrils and fire coming out of his mouth. "He bowed the heavens also." He made all the heaven, he was after them. All right, and it came down, and darkness was under his feet. And then it goes on, it was just crazy. But this is the thing, smoke came out of his nose and fire out of his mouth. And that was supposedly his god, which was, I believe, Zeus, who was the god of this realm. Now, I know this is very hard for a lot of people. They're going to say, "Oh, Roger, you got to go by the Bible." Well, this is the Bible as far as I know. And they're saying this is what happened. Now, and Jesus also said some things about this, I believe, as well. All right, this is kind of crazy, but we have to examine what was written. And it does say, it talks about he will cover thee with his feathers and under his wings and so forth. So here it's saying God is described in the following terms. He was able to breathe fire from his mouth. He had smoke come out of his nostrils. When he landed on Mount Sinai, the whole mount quaked greatly, so he was large and heavy. He filled the tabernacle, so we can guess his size was roughly the size of the tabernacle. He could talk. He had a hand or claw large enough to cover Moses' face, and he had a face and back parts. He had wings. This is the classical description of a dragon. And this was supposedly the Lord God. And Zeus was the Lord God of this realm. And he also was the one that transformed himself from the planet Jupiter, which is Zeus, into a real hot-looking guy coming down having sex with all the women, which is exactly what Satan did. He said, forget about God. And he took 200 angels out of the 600 who were supposed to be doing good things for humanity. He took 200 of them and said, let's have a party and forget about God. And then it all started from there as a mess. And then they had the giants because they were interbreeding with the angels and the sons of man and all this nonsense. And they got miles and miles tall. And Enoch was the one that discussed all this, and he was put in charge of those angels and said, no, I'm sorry, you guys screwed up big time, you're going to hell. And God was not the all-forgiving God that you can think he might be. Now, was Zeus, this is where it gets very confusing, because I think Zeus, being the guy that was the one that came down to have sex with all the women and created all this disaster, he actually gave birth to Venus through the red spot, which is actually a birth canal. And I've shown this very clearly, as it can't be missed if you look. And this was all written in the ancient text. The feared god Jupiter, they feared him. The feared god Jupiter gave birth to a fiery comet, which later was called Venus. And it came and almost hit our planet, causing all of the destruction, killed all the giants, caused a great flood. All the mud fossils happened at that time. And according to Velikovsky's account, there was like three disasters, but the worst one apparently is, the way I'm taking it, was about 3,500 years ago, and that was what created all the mud fossils and the worldwide global flood that has been recognized by all the academics now. They say, yeah, it did happen, and it created one worldwide layer of mud. And these mud fossils, all the stuff I have came from that worldwide layer, and almost every one of them is flat on one side because they laid in the mud, still wet, still sort of soft, until they absorbed all of the correct minerals to make the stuff that would normally rot away turn into solid molecules. That's called nucleophilic substitution. They come in and they substitute what was there that was volatile, and they go in there and they lock in and they stabilize it, and then when it comes out of the ground, like this alone. All right, that's been CAT scanned, DNA tested, and here it is as flat as it can be because it was in the Great Flood. And it had to be in the guy's body at the same time, because right there, the only reason for this right here is because that's where his heart is. All right, this is the left lung, and the heart sits right back right there, exactly right there. So his whole body had to be together at the same time, and then it must have got all sloshed away and the heart got disassociated. That's why I was going to call this fascia-facilitated fossilization, because this is fascia. In this case, a lung, they call it pleura because it's so big, rubbery, and heavy. But everywhere else in your body, as I showed you, is the fascia, this fluid-filled highway. And this is attached to every other part of your body. They all run through this fluid. And it's basically lymph. The lymph system is the big one. And I can actually show you the lymph system working, and nobody else can. Nobody in the entire world except me can show you the lymph system working. You want to see? All right, so now let's get into the details. Remember, that's what we're going to be seeing, and that's what that is. Now, here it is, and we can zoom in and look at it closely. This is the dragon. All right, now let's take it from a far out shot. And again, take your time. Don't rush to judgment yet. This right here is his throat. You see that? All the way down, all the way down. It got cut right here. I'm going to show you that cut. But it runs all the way down, all the way down, obviously all the way down to his stomach. And his stomach is all the way down there. It's way down here. So here we are at his head. Let's see what that throat looks up close, like close. This is it right here. You see this? That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And then it got cut right here. You see that red blood and the black blood? That's red and black is the colors of blood. And that is running out from here. All right. Now this used to be green, just totally green. And now it's turned totally black. All right, there is no growth in here anymore. This used to be, it's so green it would knock your eyes out. And it was like this. Every bit of it was this color right here. Extremely green. Now it's all dying. All right, and everywhere on Earth is in the same condition. We have everything is dying on Earth. I'm sorry, that's just a fact. And this was a cut right across his throat. And again, this is the throat, comes down, 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 down. And if you go past that, you can keep going down his throat. It just keeps going and going and going. Now, again, here's his head. And there's his throat. And here's the lining of his throat. This is the outside of his throat. And there are dragon scales. Let's look at them close. Let's go right over here. You see these dragon scales? Over here, they're leaking out. This is all runoff. Remember I said they call this effluent, which is when a body decays, it bloats inside and it blows out all of the moisture that was inside the body. And that turns into effluent, into a gooey, nasty yick stuff. But here was where his body actually ended. All right, this is just runoff. So let's look where his body did end, and it's right at these scales. These are dragon scales. These are not mountains. And that is a throat. That is not just a river valley. And I think they call it the Dra River, which is dragon. And you see all these scales, and they have a hinge on every scale. And the reason they have that hinge is so he can move his neck up and down. Otherwise, you couldn't do it. If this was all just one solid thing, you'd go, it's no good. These all have hinges. He can go all over the place. And they keep going and going and going. These are just all his dragon scaled. This is his dragon scaled body. All right, you're not going to break through that easily, my friends. Those are, to us, are mountains. But they are not mountains when you're a dragon. They are your skin. Now this again was supposedly cut by Zeus with his great and mighty sword, which they claim was thunderbolts. Now, again, we're only right down here to his neck. This is just his head and just a little piece of his neck. That's almost nothing. He's still got all of this all the way over to here. And this over here is part of his tail. That's his butt. And he has a little pooper right here. And I can show you the pooper. Because he was an avian creature. Reptiles and avians have what they call a cloaca, which poops both things at the same time. The urine and the poop come out the same spot. And I'll show you. And here's all the way you keep going, going, going. Here's all his dragon scales still out here. And you see, these are the runoff out here. This is the effluent running off of these dragon scales. And they're quite obviously dragon scales. And they have the same little... So he can do all that stuff with his tail, flop it around and all that. And way out here is feathers. Remember I talked about he will cover you with his feathers? I think these... Well, I know these are feathers out here. I've looked at them very carefully. It takes a little while for it to focus in. But you can see it. If you know what to look for. It's quite obvious. And I also now believe that this may be his wing. I didn't realize it, but I think this could be wings up here. Because green is where feathers feathers make things grow very, very green. And this is a nice green spot up here, which sort of doesn't fall into what it should be. Because why isn't this all green over here? And why isn't this all green? And why isn't this all green? So here he is up here. Here's his whole back. I originally thought this was just his wings, but somebody said to me, this guy was gigantic. Those wings could have come all the way up to here. And I said, yeah, you're right. It could be. Those could be wings. But that's just speculation. Anyway, these are the legs. And I'm going to read to you in Apollodorus what it says about his legs, his thighs being like the thighs of a human. And other than that, he's 1,100 miles long. Now, he was attacking this fish, also written about in Apollodorus, that he hurled kindled rocks. You remember that word, kindled? We talked about before. He hurled kindled rocks at the very gods, and the gods changed themselves into animals. This is an animal, a fish. And he is attacking with his kindled, hot, fiery breath against this fish. You see the back of the fish right here? Well, first of all, see the fish. See, because this is new to a lot of people. But if you follow my cursor here, forget this little black dot. I don't know what that is, to be perfectly honest with you. But this, I believe, is the eye of the fish. These are the scales. And he would have been going this way. Here's his tail here. See, that's the tail. Stuff is run over it because it all ran out here. And this must have all happened at the same time, because some of the stuff looks like it's going over the top of them, and some of them is going around them. So I think this whole event happened at the same time. And could this have happened to cause all of this catastrophe to flush out that way? I don't know. But I do know that that's a dragon, and he is spitting this stuff onto that fish. Now, what stuff is stuff? All right, let's look at his head first of all. All right, there's his head. This is his nose. It comes up around here. This is all the fluty, flashy stuff. There's his red, flared eye. You see it flaring back here? And that's written about exactly in Apollodorus. Now, dragons have beards. This is one beard, and this is the other beard. There's two beards here. And something from his nose. You see this? This is coming right out of his nose, and this comes down, and it meets up in the beards. You see the two beards are here? That's a beard, and this is the other beard. And this is spitting out something from this beard, some chemical, and it's coming from that yellow stuff. You see the yellow stuff that runs all the way down to his gut? It's coming right down here, and that is mixing with something coming out of his nose. You see this coming down? It's coming right over here, and the two of them mix together. Take your time and look. There's so much to understand about this. These are the beards. Hold on a second. Okay, let's do this. I am going to trace out the highlight of this dragon. And here he is right here. Now, this is his nose. They have a bump for the nose. Now, you see right here? Hold on. Let me just find my other colors here. You see this coming right over here? You see this? All that stuff coming in there? Well, that is coming right out of his nose. Now, you can't see underneath his lip here, but this is, remember, this is his throat. Whoops. This right here is basically where his scales are. All right. Now, this is his throat. Hold on. His throat runs right down here. All right, and that, whoops. That goes right down, of course, to his little tummy. And that throat would have come way out over here, basically. And his throat would have actually, his mouth would have been like down and coming up around here somewhere. All right, so here he is. Now, what else? This coming out of here, out of the beard, comes out like this. And when the two of them meet together, they just combust. And then it just gets crazy coming down here, and this is where all the fire spits out and all the down to the fish. All right, so, and this, of course, hold on, one more thing, was his red fiery eye, which is right here. All right, and this, of course, was that yellow fluty stuff. It actually comes down right here. You see it? It comes right down into there, and that's what fed that beard, and that runs all the way down his body, all the way down here. All right, so that is the dragon. Now, just to reiterate the whole thing, this is just runoff. This has nothing to do with the dragon. This is his scaled throat. That is inside of his throat where he swallows things. That is that fluty yellow stuff that comes up and came out of his beard. And when I take this away, you will see these things again, but you can go back to this and look if you want. This is his nose, and right out of here, right out of his nose, where it would have been the smoke, somehow this came down here and mixed with this beard stuff and just exploded. And when I show you, you can't miss it. It is just horrifying looking. So let's take this off. And remember what I showed you. And what do we see? We see exactly what I said. Exactly. You see the yellow stuff coming up? I'm going to focus in closer so you can see it exactly. There's that yellow stuff coming up. Really nasty, nasty stuff. And there it is coming across down into the beard. You see it? Now, what's coming here? These two mix together. It's like a mixture of the two. This and this get together, and man, it's all over. Well, where did this come from? That came right out of his nose. Follow this little back, all the way up, right up to his nose. It came right out of his nose. And this is what smoke and whatever coming out of his nose. That came right out of his nose, came over, came down here, came down here, came down here, came down here, came over here, and mixed with this stuff coming out of his beard. All right, this is coming out of his beard, this is coming down here, and the whole thing turns into a nasty, nasty soup. Look at this. These are where the two things mix. And it turns into fire. You see the green? And that, the two of them together, when they hit together, and that is being pointed right at the fish. All right, so this is coming down to the fish. Now, it keeps coming down, 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 and it's starting to hit things. And when it does, it hit layers of things, like the layer of the fin. And it just explodes it. You see this? This is nasty, nasty, nasty chemistry. This is not anything that you want to be in the middle of. Now, what do we see here? This is the vital flesh of the fish. This right up here, here's his fin. All right? So his fin, yeah, you know, it's a fin. They're kind of hard and not like vital flesh. Vital flesh has blood flowing through it, you know, a lot of blood and so forth. So all the way down to here is his vital flesh, and then it didn't get past that. And at that point, I guess they both died or whatever. But let's look at how it invades. It comes down just terribly nasty. And here it's hitting the vital flesh. Here's where the vital flesh gets invaded. You see it? Look at that. And what did it do to the vital? It actually eroded and melted the scales. So now we're down under the scales into his bodily tissue, which is nothing but blood vessels and arteries and veins and capillaries and arterioles and all that. And here they are right here. These are arteries. The big ones are arteries. They branch off into the blood vessels. See all the blood vessels coming down, blood vessel, blood vessel, blood vessel, blood vessel. And every one of those branches all off into these arterioles, which are little tiny ones that come out. And they all service, every single cell in your whole body has to be serviced with blood. And then by the time it's all done servicing all of the cells that are in here, it dumps what's left over into these. This is really the lymph system. I believe this is lymph. Now, arteries turn into veins. Veins suck all the used blood back up. But I think this is lymph node tubing. I'm pretty sure. Or it could be veins. I can't say one way or the other. But I can tell you one thing. There's a ton of lymph in this fish trying to save itself. Lymph tries to come in and take all the nasty stuff out that's trying to invade you. That's what your lymphatic system does. It takes the nasty stuff and it brings it down to the lymph nodes. And the lymph nodes destroy all of this nasty stuff and kill it, and then it gets flushed out in the excretory system. So, can we see the lymph nodes actually working? Yes, we can. I actually found them. And these are lymph nodes that have been invaded and are dying. You see it? Why are these black things here? I can tell you why they're there. They're lymph nodes. And they are being attacked by this green stuff. Remember I showed you the nasty green looking stuff coming down? That's all the nasty stuff coming from above hitting the fish. So what is the response of the fish to this nasty, nasty attack? It says, all right, send the lymph out there. Collect up all that stuff. Bring it down to the lymph nodes, and it'll clean it up. Well, it didn't realize what it was up against. There's much too much of this. But this right here is the lymph. This is the lymph. Let me back out of here and start again to show you. That, I said, is the lymph. All right? Don't forget, this is the attack. This is the nasty stuff. This kills all the body tissue. And this is where it's trying to clean up some of this lymph. I mean, some of this toxin. So it sends the lymph in, which is this pink looking stuff. You see it? And it's grabbing a hold of that nasty stuff. You see it? It's flushing it out. It's flushing through there, grabbing all of that crap and saying, all right, take it down to the lymph nodes. Well, what is a lymph node? A lymph node is something that dumps the garbage in your body. It's like the trash collector in your body. These things bring it down and dump it into the lymph node. And I'll show you what a lymph node is right now. Okay, my friends, get ready for this. This is a lymph node. Now, your lymphatic system has this fluid, this pinkish fluid running all through your body. Then you have the vein blood and you have the artery blood. Veins and arteries run through your body, and one of them the artery sends out the good blood from your heart through all your organs and so forth, and the vein blood brings the used blood back up into the heart to get recharged from oxygen and everything into your lungs and all that. However, in the meantime of all this happening, you're making all kinds of garbage in your body that has to be dealt with. And that is the job of the lymphatic system. And the lymph node is the dump. What happens is the lymph vessels bring the garbage back to the lymph node, and the lymph node is supposed to be the sorter of the garbage. And it has filters. You see all these little filters around the edges? And then it has the actual nodes, and inside the nodes is bacteria and enzymes that destroy all the stuff you're bringing back into it. Now, if you overwhelm that thing, it will die. That's what's called lymphoma. If you overload it with bad stuff, toxins and so forth, and it can't respond because it either doesn't have the bacteria in there or it's just overwhelmed, there's just too much, it will die. And that's what's happening right now to the fish. It killed the lymph nodes. All right, so let's just do a little recap. The dragon had its toxins mix right up in here between the nose and the beard, and I don't know why the nose is involved, but they say they snort all these flames and stuff and smoke out of their nose, and that came down and hit the fish's fin and then made its way down to the vital flesh. Now we're going to be over here watching what happens to kill these lymph nodes, because they're dying because they're being overwhelmed. So here's that pink stuff. All right, first of all, there's the toxins coming down. These are the toxins trying to invade, and they are invading like crazy. And they are just nasty as can be. Now, here we sent all the pink fluid, which is the lymph nodes, lymph fluids, to take it away. So lymph can flow virtually everywhere in your body. There's no, it seems to be it's very easily moved. And you see how vast this system is of lymph? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's just like the blood vessels, only it's this other stuff. Now, it's coming along here with all that toxin. This is all the toxins and everything that is pulling out from this invasion. And it's bringing it down here, bringing it down, and then it's filtering it all down into the lymph nodes. Now, here's a lymph node right here. So all of that stuff is coming down, and the lymph node, as I showed you before, is supposed to take all of that stuff into itself through the lymph vessels and then work against that chemistry to get rid of it. Well, there's just too much. Now, wait till you see how cool this is. Don't forget, this is where it's coming down, coming into the lymph node. Watch this. Give it a second to home in. You see these? These are filters. You see those? Those are filters. They're not just there for nothing, little stripes there. Those are filters. And as this stuff comes in, the big stuff gets caught out here and probably broken down more, or I don't know what happens to it out here. But it's too big to get into the lymph node. The lymph node deals with the chemistry, I believe, of breaking down the toxins. But all of these get filtered out here. Now, what happens to them, I don't know. Eventually they have to get broken down, but you can see that there's the filtration going on. Now, once you're inside that lymph node, it's supposed to get rid of all the nasty stuff and then spit out good stuff back into your, or spit out the, it's supposed to take in the bad stuff and give out something that either goes to be dumped or is cleaned up and goes right back into your system. I'm not exactly sure. But it has to clean it up, and then, and these are all, you see, here's another one over here. This one's getting killed too. The same thing's happening to here. And this is the exact same structure. Remember I showed you the filters? There's the filters on this one. And the stuff can't get through. It's being kept out so that it can't kill this lymph node. But the lymph node is just overwhelmed. It can't live. Isn't that something? I hope you can see that. Yeah, you should be able to see that fine. This is just crazy stuff, but those are lymph nodes. And it's killing them all the way down this whole line. You see them? They can't handle this influx of nastiness. And they're all dying all the way down here. Over here. And they will die everywhere. And don't forget, this is nothing but bodily tissue. It's eating away all of the top scales and everything. And you're down into where the arteries were, all the way down into the capillaries. And they dump into whatever this is. Now, this, I'm not sure whether it's the vein or the lymph nodes. I mean the lymph ducts. That I have to work out. But somewhere along the line, the lymph just goes around through the body collecting up all the trash, bringing it over to the lymph nodes, which are now dead. Okay, there's 3 things that make plants and vegetation grow very, very green. One of them is blood. They love blood. And they'll grow green as green can be. Bone meal's good too. Feather meal is excellent. Feathers, they grind it up and sell it to make plants grow green. And also poop. You put fertilizer on plants to make them grow. And this poops as well. Every animal has to poop. Now, can I show you the poop? Yes, I can. And I can show you this is an avian creature because it has a cloaca. They both come together and they dump out in one stream. Just like a bird does when you get the black and white stuff together, that's coming out of its cloaca. It doesn't have a separate sex organ, separate discharge for the anus and the penis or vagina. They're 2 separate pieces, but they come right together and they discharge through one tube. I will show you that right now. All right, so most animals have their pooper right about here. If this is his neck and this is his body, and that's his tail. Now, so let's look down here and see if we can find that. And just guess what? In the middle of this desert where there is nothing green, what are we seeing here? A whole batch of greenness. And why is this so green? And what do we see here? We see this and we see this. Those are 2 separate discharges. All right, this is the poop side and that's the urine side. All right, this one here, you see it come down? It's coming down all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, and right out here. Right out here. That's the urine side. This is the poop side. This one comes down from the gut. This one comes right down from the gut. All right, right out of here. And when it does, it creates poop. Now, it's not pooping today, I don't think, although I can't say it's not, but it appears to be dead. But there's so much residual stuff that was in the digestive system coming out of the stomach that it's still got a lot of nutrients. Now, the 2 of them come together here. You see them? This one and this one together. That's the urine, that's the poop. They come right in here, and this is where they discharge out, right out of here. They come right out here. And I think this is the pile of poop right here. When they die, they usually poop. And I think that's what this is, coming right from here. So anyway, I think I've shown my presentation, and it's very, very hard to dismiss this. Now, I also said this was written about in Apollodorus. And Apollodorus wrote of all the ancient Greek mythology from Hesiod down. And that is about as far back as it goes, as Hesiod. And that is only 800 BC. 800 BC, that's all. That's only 3,000 years ago. And he wrote what Zeus did, and all of the progenitors, the early people that, well, not people, they're dragons primarily, dragons and giants and creatures that you could never imagine. All of the stuff they wrote about Cyclopses and Hercules and all of them, they were all here. And Zeus's daughters, which were the Muses, told Hesiod, you write all these things down. Our father did, and he was a god, and he is the god of this earth. And he wrote all these things down. Hesiod. It was called the Theogony and the Ages of Man and all these things. Exact details, and I mean just unbelievable details. If you read Apollodorus, it's just going to knock your socks off. And he talks exactly about this dragon and his throat being cut and attacking. Well, let me just give it to you. Hold on. Don't forget, this is supposed to be about God. This is 2 Samuel 22. And then right here it says, there went up a smoke out of his nostrils and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. All right, he came down to earth and he shook the foundations of the earth. He was so big, which would be a god. All right, this is Hesiod. He was an ancient Greek poet. They think he was around 750 to 650 BC. I'm going with 800 BC. And he wrote all of these different, the stories that the muses told him to write. The Theogony, Works and Days. He wrote about Pandora and all of that stuff. I mean, a lot. See, they're just starting to talk about him again. Hesiod, one of the earliest Greek poets, often called the father of Greek didactic poetry. This just came out a couple of days ago. So they're starting to rethink all of the things that he said. All right, because I'm finding that they were rooted in truth. Now this clears up a lot of stuff. This is called Metamorphosis, and this is by Ovid, and he wrote right at the time of Julius Caesar, which is right at the turn of the millennium, right around the time of Jesus' birth. Now, he wrote about what everybody else wrote, but he compiled it in such a way that it all made a complete total sense. Because metamorphosis means transitioning between like a caterpillar and turning into a butterfly. It's changing, completely changing one thing into another, but it's still the same thing, only it's just totally different now. And that's what the gods did. They could change themselves into anything they wanted. And he brings this up explicitly in the first lines of everything that he ever wrote. And this was one of the biggest works ever done outside the Bible. This was as heavily read as the Bible was at that time. And this had a whole different position to the Bible. And Metamorphosis talks about the gods being able to transform themselves into being really hot-looking guys, coming down and having sex with all the women. And that's what they did. That's exactly what the Bible says. There was 200 of them, signed a pact against God, came down and had sex with all the women. And they went into the daughters of man and had giants, and then they had to wipe it all out. It's basically the same story. You see this? He wrote everything. The creation, the ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who was actually Noah. That's the Greek for Noah. And they talk about him building a chest and surviving in the waters for 9 days or something. But all of this stuff is about the gods and planets and everything. Now, here's the key. They could transform themselves into anything they wanted. See right here. In the very first words of his poem, what they call a poem, it's a work of art, really. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the open lines of the poem. He says, I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. So one thing is changed into another thing completely. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon the victim, whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. These were these giants all over the earth. They're the bodies all over the earth. All right? There's a great variety among the types of transformations, a great variety. It can take place between these different transformations. They can go from human to inanimate objects like the Nile River or constellations or animals or plants or ants or funguses and mushrooms. They can change one sex to another. They can become colored pebbles if they want. All right? They can do anything they want because they are matter in its most basic form. All right, this one here, this is the mind exploder, Apollodorus. Now, he wrote around the 2nd century BC. But again, he worked on Hesiod's work and all the other people that were writing at the same time. Hesiod is the primary source of all of the stuff that we know about. And this was the sky had sex with the earth. And it goes on to, I mean, nobody would ever believe it about the Cyclopses and Hades and all of the different moons and the ocean and everything. They gave birth to these things. These things were actual creatures, but they were gods, and they could transform themselves into anything they want. So it starts out with the birth of Zeus, who was the god of this universe, or of our solar system. And then there was the War of the Titans, the Olympian gods, all this stuff, down till they get to the War of the Giants. And that's where we're going to pick it up at here. And Typhon, who is the dragon in the desert. And Prometheus, who actually was the one that created mankind. Deucalion was Noah. And it goes on and on and on into book 1, book 2, so forth, and book 3, and all of it gets to Hercules and the labors of Hercules and Perseus and the sons of Perseus and all of these different planets and all of that stuff. So let's look up 1.6.2. All right, this is extremely long, but it is just unbelievable. Let's just take it from here about when they killed all the giants. Now, the other giants, Zeus smote. It goes on, everybody, Hercules shot him in his right eye, and the other guy Apollo shot him in his left eye with red-hot missiles and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they all killed each other, and the Fates fighting with brazier clubs killed Argeus and Thoas. The other giants, Zeus smote, we killed, and destroyed with thunderbolts. All right, because he was the god of thunder and lightning and all that. And all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. So that's the end of the giants. Now, when the gods had overcome the giants, so the gods now got rid of the giants, done. Earth herself, Gaia, was still more enraged. She was pissed off. These were her kids. So she had intercourse with Tartarus, which is supposedly hell, and brought forth Typhon. He's the one that is in the desert. And here is his description. All right, he was a hybrid between man and beast. Now listen to this carefully. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of earth. His thighs were of human shape and of such prodigious bulk, he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. His head would have been at least 3 times higher than the space station is now. One of his hands reached out to the west, the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads. This is what was written. Now, it also says that Zeus cut those heads off with thunderbolts. From the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which drawn out reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt, and his hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks. Now listen, fire flashed from his eyes. Such and so great was Typhon when hurling kindled rocks. Remember that kindled rocks from Samuel 2:22? He made for the very heavens. He was going after the gods to get them. He made for the very heavens with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth, which we could see. When the gods saw him rushing at the heaven, listen to this carefully, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. That was a fish, which is an animal that Typhon was spitting these flames and fires at. No. Zeus, though, pelted Typhon at a distance with thunderbolts and at close quarters and struck him down with an adamantine sickle, cut his throat. And as he fled, pursued him closely and so forth. Anyways, cut his throat with the sickle. And then it goes on to some very other strange stuff where Zeus himself, it gets crazy after that. I mean, it's crazy already. I mean, it can't get any crazier than this, but it does. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier. But what I have just seen, I can see in the desert. I can see Typhon. I can see he was cut in his throat. And these are all things that are written, and they are on ancient maps as well. Another little taste here. Prometheus, who made man, Prometheus molded man out of water and earth, clay and earth. Water and clay. And he also gave him fire, which Zeus did not want. So he nailed Prometheus to a cliff for a bunch of years. And every day an eagle swooped in and ate his liver. And then at night it grew back. Finally, Hercules rescued him. This is just all this crazy. And now, Prometheus had a son who was Noah. Prometheus, the guy that made mankind, had a son, Noah. He reigned in the region about Pythia, married Pyrrha, a daughter of Ephistomus and Pandora. And Pandora was sent as a punishment for mankind, as a woman, the first woman fashioned by the gods. Pandora. And she was sent as a punishment. It worked. When Zeus would destroy the men of the Bronze Age, Deucalion, by advice of Prometheus, Deucalion, which is Noah, by Prometheus' father, the creator of mankind, constructed a chest, which is the ark, and having stored it with provisions, he embarked in it with Pyrrha. But Zeus, pouring heavy rain from heaven, flooded the greater part of Greece, so that all men were destroyed except a few who fled to the high mountains in the neighborhood. It was then that the mountains in Thessaly parted, and all the world outside the isthmus was overwhelmed. That was the great flood. Deucalion, floating in the chest over the sea for 9 days and as many nights, drifted to Parnassus, and there, when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus, who he called the god of escape. And Zeus sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose what he would. Now listen to this. This is amazing. And he chose to get men. And at the bidding of Zeus, he took up stones and he threw them up over his head. And the stones that he threw, Noah threw over his head, became men, and the stones Pyrrha threw became women. Hence, people were called metamorphically people, which is Laos, which means stones. All right, and then he goes on and on and on. It's just, it's over the top crazy, but I believe now that it's rooted in truth. I just have to believe it. All right, so this is very deep stuff, and where does this leave us with our current belief system? This is supposedly the secret sayings of Jesus. They were discovered in 1945. They've been verified as authentic, and they were in a cave in the Holy Land somewhere, and a kid threw a stone in there to get his sheep out of there, and he heard a pottery break, and he went in and he found all these scrolls, and they are called the Gospel of Thomas, the Nag Hammadi Library, which is the secret sayings. It says these are the secret sayings which living Jesus spoke. When he was alive talking, his scribe wrote them down, who was doubting Thomas. All right? And he said, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. I don't know how anybody is ever going to understand all these. You're never going to, I can tell you that. I can't. And I've tried some, but it's very, very confusing. However, there is some here that's point me to the fact that Jesus is as advertised. That's my feeling now. He is exactly who he said he was, and all the ancient everything points to the fact that it's different than we thought. But Jesus came to alert us to pay attention to the rules and everything that was written down. And he says right here, he says, Jesus said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he's going to be troubled. He will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all. Now, astonished, yes, absolutely. And he talks about looking to see, recognize what's in your sight. Whatever's hidden from you will become plain to you. But you have to look. There's nothing hidden which will not become manifest. But if you're not looking, you're never going to see it. That's all. Don't tell lies. Don't do what you hate. He's saying all the things that everybody has heard before. He came to cast fire upon the world and see. I am guarding it until it blazes. He didn't come here to... He came here to separate the wheat from the chaff, and that's what's going to happen. Heaven will pass away, and the one above it will pass away, and the dead are not alive, and the living will not die. In the days when you consume what was dead, you made it alive. It became part of your body, so it became alive. When you come to dwell in the light, and he talks about light all the time, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became two, the black and the white. But when you become two, what will you do? That's the black and white particles of light. And guess what he says again in number 50? Jesus said, if they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light. The place where the light came into being on its own accord and established itself and became manifest, which is mean to be seen, through their image. If they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children, the children of light. We are the elect of the living Father, the selected ones. If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father in you? Say to them, it is movement and repose. That's the light. Now listen to what he says in number, 56. Here it is right here, 56. Whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. The world is a corpse. Everything that I can find is from creatures' bodies. And the world itself, I believe, is a corpse. And whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. Anyway, so if you pay attention, these things are for you to see and for others as a test. And here it is right here. Jesus said, he who has recognized the world has found the body, or the bodies, I'm saying. But he who has found the bodies is superior to the world. Now, because people can't open their mind to see what's in front of them. And he talks about the teachers and how their destruction does not sleep because they're false teachers. And that's what I have now. I said, that's nothing but. I can't find any that are willing to discuss any of this stuff, even with the evidence I supported, showing you the dragons and the giants, and I have all that stuff, DNA, CAT scans, I have everything, 100% to support. And Yale is going crazy. Well, put everything we can do to find this little piece of slime. This stuff means nothing to them. That's distressing. If I was going to Yale, I'd ask for my money back. Okay, it's been running very long. I think I've made my case, and I talked about the lymph system and all that stuff. And this is the big deal that Yale made over this little slimy thing. I think it's just nothing more than this. And again, this is the guy, Derek Briggs. We're going to throw every possible analytic technique at this because we want to figure out what this little piece of slime is. And none of the stuff I show has any relevance to them at all. I showed it to them. They took credit for my work, and then they want to twist it a little bit and keep it sequestered so that people don't understand. We did have a global worldwide flood, and all of these giant creatures and dragons and everything were real. And because of people like Derek Briggs and Yale University and all the other universities have the same attitude. Don't come here with that. Absolutely not. Well, as I say, my new saying is, it will never not be true. You can hide all you want, but it will never not be true. All right? I love you all. Thank you. Bye. Okay, my friends, as you know, I keep my eye on all of these things, beyond the unknown and the unexplained and all these things. And the only reason I'm showing you this about the Tully monster is because Yale is involved in this. And they should have been involved in my discoveries, and they refuse to engage. And they engage in this little snail, basically, is what that's about what all it is. All right, the reason I'm showing you this, because it's kind of an issue here with Derek Briggs from Yale. He says basically nobody knew what it was, said Derek Briggs, Yale Hutchinson Professor of Geology and Geophysics. He's the curator of the Invertebrate Paleontology Yale Museum, co-author of the study. The fossils are not easy to interpret, and they vary quite a bit. Some people thought it might be this bizarre swimming mollusk, which is basically what it was. We decided to throw every possible analytic technique at it for some little worm. And the things I presented were, complete species. with DNA, with CAT scans, and they're still available to be tested. And they were all fossilized. And then they did actually write a paper basically taking credit for my work. I wrote the paper much earlier than them, and I had already presented it to them. And then they wrote basically almost word for word what I told them. See, this is my paper from 2015. And I had already had DNA tests and CAT scans done, and I said skin has 50 times the silicon as other tissue. That's where all the high silica-rich oceans came from. And it was one worldwide flood. I presented this to everybody and Yale, and they refused to engage. And then they throw everything they can at this little piece of slime. And this is their paper. This is 2016, a year after I had my paper, and actually my book as well, because I was frustrated. And here's the guy, Derek Briggs, and Lydia Tarhan too. Lydia Tarhan, Derek Briggs. They're the same ones that are in this Tully monster thing. And they say exactly what I told them. He says, exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures in silica-rich oceans. They were silica-rich. They had no idea why that happened, but they say it never would have happened except for all the silicates. The silicates happened because we almost got hit by Venus, and the oceans, or at least the waters, boiled, especially right here in my area in Connecticut. And it's all Triassic rock right here. So this really needs to be looked into. Well, I mean, I've already looked into it. We need to look into why Yale is not doing their job. I thought their job was education, and not to steal my work. They literally stole my work. And they said, it's exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures. And they talk about casts and molds of sandstone. No, it was mud. And I told them it was mud. And it's here is facilitated by the high silica saturated. Well, no, it was fascia facilitated. See, they're even using some of my words. And they just took credit for it. And then they came out and said, here, the same time, they're saying, oh boy, we all figured this out. Well, this is 2016. Again, long after I had presented this to them, years. A Yale-led research team found all these and the bodies of findings appear in a journal of geology. Well, they're saying it's 540 million years ago. Everything I have, it came right off the surface of the earth. I didn't even dig for it, 99% of it. It says most of them are outright bizarre in appearance, do not resemble any organism alive today. Well, these are no-toe foot. You would think that Yale University, our prestigious university, would be interested in something like that. This wasn't CAT scanned or DNA tested, but my other stuff was. And it's more spectacular than this. All right, but they want to look at some piece of slime and throw all of our analysis into this. This is Derek Briggs and Lydia Tarhan, the same people. And they say that could it have been a failed evolutionary experiment? Because it was one worldwide flood and a layer completely around and colonized the oceans. No, the whole earth was the ocean at that time. All right, and they say the animals themselves are entirely soft-bodied. No, they weren't. They had bones and everything else. And the bones, just like this bone, transitioned into what was called mudstone. Mudstone was one time a piece of biology that's been nucleophilically invaded with whatever it was in. And in this case, it was in boiled-out mud, which is flesh. And it invaded into that and became just a mudstone. All right, so they say what they realized was the oceans during that time were much richer in dissolved silicate than air. They didn't realize that. I realized it, and it was because of 50 times more silica in skin, and that was what boiled off and created mud. Now, listen to this. I also told them that it happened very, very rapidly. And they say this enabled the transformation of loose sand, no, it was mud, around the animals to make them into rock to occur over a matter of hours or years. Yes, I wouldn't say hours, but I would certainly say within years. And that's because of this continuous invasion, which is called nucleophilic substitution, until they become stable. And they will become stable sooner or later if there's enough movement of silica. Silica primarily works with a lot of things to fill in voids and all that, like the veins, quartz veins. Those are actually literally quartz veins. I'll show you something. All right. Primarily, this was fascia-facilitated fossilization. It was the mud fossils. I changed it to mud fossils because the fascia was just a part of it. But basically, fascia is instrumental in perfectly preserved fossilization in wet, fine, continuously wet mud, not sand. The product can be exact copies of living creatures, flesh, colors, and all. This was long before Yale, which is, they said, exceptional preservation. Yes, they're right. And I also actually discovered this fluid-filled highway, too. Fascia is a tubular, fluid-filled fabric network. And now they just discovered that in 2018 and wrote a paper saying that it was the biggest organ in the human body, and it's brand new. They never knew it was there before. And this is 2015, and these are my exact words. Fascia is a tubular, fluid-filled fabric network. And they weren't paying attention. Listen, fascia was thought to be mere packing material and virtually inert. And that's when I first contacted people about 2009, saying there's something going on with all of this fuzzy stuff in my mud fossils, because I can see it everywhere. And it says it's long been ignored as a subject of research. Nobody was looking into it. But recently, there's been new equipment that allows viewing of the fascia and so forth. And I said it is a tubular, fluid-filled fabric network that does the whole body. And I think it might, and I still think it might very well be, almost like a fiber optic network, because it goes through the entire body. And somehow it senses everything that's going on and communicates that to the brain to excrete chemicals or whatever it's doing. I can't see how the chemistry can work without having some kind of an interaction to all the cells in the body, back up to the gut brain and axis, and all of the little neural fibers in the body end up, I believe, with their conductivity through this fascia fiber optic style network. Possible. That's just a guess, though. But I can tell you one thing for a fact: this is a new organ. So don't forget, I discovered that. I'm telling you right now. These things, they won't even listen to you. And they don't even know yet how important this organ is. Meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. This is the fluid-filled highway. This is in 2018. This is 3 or 4 years after I was pointing it out. And this is that fluid-filled highway. They never knew it was here. By the time they had it, it was flat as a pancake because all the fluid was drained out of it. They just never looked, basically. Because you can see it right there. Well, why doesn't somebody say, what's this thing doing? I mean, that's just a picture. That's nothing that is fancy. But whenever they examined it, they had them already flattened out into just a flat plate. Here, I'll just tell you what it says. It says, with all that's known about the human anatomy, you wouldn't expect doctors to discover a new body part. But now researchers say exactly what they have done. They found a network of fluid-filled spaces. That's exactly what I said, fluid-filled tubing in a tissue that hadn't been seen before. Nobody even knew it was there. These fluid-filled spaces discovered in connective tissue all over the body, including below the skin surface, linings, digestive tract, urinary system, lungs, hearts, everywhere. It's 100% because it's nothing more than your membranes, basically. It's a layer of membrane. And according to a new study, and published March 27. Previously, researchers had thought these tissue layers were dense wall of collagen, strong structural protein, which gives you a nice structure because you can pull it. It's like a fabric bag. But the new finding reveals rather than a wall, it's more like an open, fluid-filled highway. Exactly what I said. And I don't know this guy, but I know people that know him. Anyway, he wrote the paper about it. And I talked about it being the fluid-filled highway. And now they still don't understand its importance, because inside these red ones live your enzymes and bacteria. And they squirt things into this fluid-filled highway to go all around your body, because every part of your body is connected into this layer. 100% of your body. 100% of your body, every cell and everything is connected into this fluid-filled layer. Every single cell in these fluids, and they can go in and repair things. I mean, when I say every cell is on this layer, no, it's not every cell obviously on this layer, but this is where your immune system exists. Now, can they send enzymes down into here? I would assume so, because you can get cut way down in here and have infections going on, and somebody's got to go down there and fix it. And that's happens in the lymphatic system. This is a little bit different than the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is a network entirely like blood in your whole body, and that picks up all the debris and stuff. That's your lymph system, and that's another thing that I don't think is understood well either. But I can see it, and I'm going to show you very shortly that lymph system, because I can see it in one of the mud fossils. It's so gigantic, you won't even, it's going to blow your mind right out of your head.